Esmeralda Ruiz was a dreamer, a writer. She filled notebooks with stories. She saw magic in ordinary things. School was her canvas. She excelled in English class. She joined the drama club. Her laugh was infectious, her spirit bright. Esmeralda attended Northwood High, a place of manicured lawns and gleaming hallways. The school boasted a stellar reputation. Parents felt lucky to have their children there. Teachers were lauded as the best. But darkness lurked beneath the surface, a darkness that would soon consume Esmeralda. Mr. Callahan was young, charismatic. He taught history with a passion that captivated students. He had a way of making everyone feel special. He noticed Esmeralda's spark. He praised her writing, her insights. He lingered after class, offering extra help. He became her confidant. He was a mentor, he said, someone who saw her potential. He encouraged her dreams. He listened to her problems. He offered solace from family arguments. He filled the void left by her absent father. He was everything she thought she needed. The manipulation was subtle at first. Compliments became loaded. Touches lingered too long. He isolated her from her friends. He made her doubt herself, then offered reassurance. He twisted her words, her actions. He made her feel special, then guilty. He controlled her emotions. Esmeralda's grades slipped, her laughter faded. She withdrew from her friends. Her mother noticed the changes. The once vibrant girl was now a shadow. Her eyes held a constant sadness. Her mother questioned her, but Esmeralda offered excuses. She was just tired, stressed. But the truth was a monster she couldn't name. One night the dam broke. Esmeralda's carefully constructed walls crumbled. She sobbed in her mother's arms. The words spilled out, broken and raw. Mr. Callahan, the trust, the betrayal. Her mother listened, her heart shattering. Rage and fear battled within her. The truth was out. Esmeralda's nightmare was finally revealed. But this was only the beginning. The fight for justice, for healing, was far from over.
Esmeralda's words were barely audible. A choked whisper. Her mother Maria stopped folding laundry. She turned. Dread coiled in her gut. Esmeralda's eyes were wide, terrified. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. Callahan, he hurt me." The words hung in the air. Maria's breath caught in her throat. She crossed the room to Esmeralda, pulled her close, held her tight. Her daughter's body was shaking. Maria's mind raced. Mr. Callahan, Esmeralda's English teacher. The man Maria had trusted. The man who praised Esmeralda's writing. He was a monster. "Tell me, mi amor," Maria whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Tell me everything." And so Esmeralda did. Her voice, small and shaky, painted a horrifying picture. A betrayal of trust, a violation of innocence. Maria listened, her heart shattering into a million pieces. Rage, hot and consuming, coursed through her. She would protect her daughter. She would fight for justice. Maria held Esmeralda close long after her story ended. The weight of it pressed down on them, suffocating. But amidst the fear and pain, a spark of determination ignited in Maria's eyes. She would not let this break them. She would be her daughter's shield, her voice, her champion. She would help Esmeralda find her voice again, even if it was a whisper. The fluorescent lights of the hospital seemed to buzz. Each hum felt like a hammer blow to Maria's skull. The sterile smell of disinfectant choked her. Esmeralda sat beside her, pale and silent. The examination room felt cold, clinical, a stark contrast to the warmth of their home, now tainted by the shadow of betrayal. The doctor, a kind woman with gentle eyes, explained the procedure. Each word felt like a violation, a stark reminder of what Esmeralda had endured. Maria squeezed her daughter's hand, offering a silent promise of support. The examination was a blur, a necessary nightmare. Evidence gathered, a violation documented. Leaving the hospital, Maria felt a surge of anger. This wasn't right. Esmeralda, her bright, creative girl, was now a victim, forced to relive the trauma, to have her body scrutinized, poked, and prodded. All because of him, Mr. Callahan. The name felt like poison on her tongue. At the police station, the detective listened intently. He was a father himself, Maria could tell. His eyes held a flicker of empathy, of shared anger. But his questions were relentless, probing, forcing Esmeralda to relive every detail. Maria wanted to scream, to shield her daughter from the pain, but she knew this was necessary. Every question, every tear, brought them closer to justice. News traveled fast in their small town. Whispers turned into hushed conversations, then bold pronouncements. Esmeralda's story became public, splashed across headlines, debated on social media. The community, once a source of comfort, now felt suffocating. Eyes followed them everywhere they went. Some held sympathy, others doubt. The whispers followed Esmeralda, clung to her like shadows. She withdrew, retreating into herself. Her once vibrant personality dimmed, her laughter silenced. She stopped writing poetry, her words trapped in the prison of her pain. Her room, once a sanctuary filled with books and dreams, became her refuge, the door closed to the judging eyes of the world. Maria watched her daughter wither, her heart breaking anew each day. She tried to be strong, to be the unwavering pillar of support Esmeralda needed, but the fear, the anger, the helplessness threatened to consume her. She clung to the hope for justice, for a future where Esmeralda's laughter would fill their home once more, a future where the whispers would fade, replaced by a chorus of support and understanding. Section 4. Whispers on Trial. Sometimes, even after the storm has passed, the scars remain. These scars, both seen and unseen, tell a story of resilience and unyielding spirit. They remind us of the battles fought and the strength it took to overcome. And, while the wounds may heal, the marks they leave behind shape who we are and who we become.
Foresee was thick with anticipation. A hush fell over the room. It was the kind of silence that seemed to vibrate with unspoken words, with held breaths. Every cough, every rustle of paper seemed to echo in the stillness. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone present. At the defense table sat James Callahan, a man who once held the respected position of a high school English teacher. His face, usually animated and engaging, was now pale and drawn. His eyes darted nervously around the room, avoiding direct contact with the jury. He seemed to shrink under the weight of their gaze. His leg bounced nervously under the table. Across from him sat Esmeralda Ruiz, now 17, her youthful innocence forever marred by the events that brought them all here. Her small frame seemed even smaller in the vastness of the courtroom, yet her gaze was steady, unwavering. She clutched a handkerchief in her hand, her knuckles white with tension. The silence stretched on, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension. It was a silence that spoke volumes. It spoke of accusation, of betrayal, of the long shadow cast by abuse. It was a silence that demanded to be broken, and then it was, shattered by the voice of the prosecutor. The trial of James Callahan had begun. The prosecutor, a tall woman with a commanding presence, laid out the case against James Callahan. Her words were sharp, precise, cutting through the heavy atmosphere of the courtroom. She painted a picture of a predator, hiding behind a veneer of respectability, using his position of power to manipulate and abuse a young girl entrusted to his care. "This is a case about trust," she began, her voice resonating through the silent courtroom. Trust that was betrayed in the most heinous way. She detailed the insidious nature of the abuse, the grooming, the manipulation, the escalation from seemingly harmless compliments to inappropriate messages, late-night encounters, and ultimately, sexual assault. The defense attorney, a younger man with a slick demeanor, countered with a narrative of misinterpretation, of teenage angst, of a girl caught up in her own fantasies. He attempted to paint Esmeralda as unreliable, her poetry as evidence of a wild imagination, prone to exaggeration. He suggested that Callahan's actions were those of a caring teacher, perhaps a little misguided, but certainly not criminal. The courtroom became a battleground of narratives. Each word, each piece of evidence presented, was a weapon wielded by both sides, shaping the perception of the jury. The tension in the room was palpable, the gravity of the situation hanging heavy in the air. The prosecution called upon a string of witnesses. A school janitor testified to seeing Esmeralda leaving Callahan's classroom late one evening, their expressions etched in his memory. A student counselor spoke of Esmeralda's dramatic change in demeanor, her once vibrant personality now shrouded in anxiety and fear. Each testimony added another brick to the wall of evidence being built against James Callahan. Then came Esmeralda's turn to take the stand. The air crackled with anticipation as she walked with quiet dignity towards the witness stand. Her voice, though soft, was firm as she recounted the events that led to that fateful day. She spoke of Callahan's initial charm, the way he made her feel special, the gradual shift in his behavior, the fear that began to consume her. Her testimony was the emotional crux of the trial. She spoke with a raw honesty that resonated throughout the courtroom. Her vulnerability was palpable, her pain echoing in the silence that followed her testimony. Even Callahan, who had maintained a stoic facade throughout the trial, seemed visibly affected by her words. His gaze dropped to his lap, unable to meet her eyes. The defense, facing a mountain of evidence and a compelling victim testimony, mounted a desperate attempt to discredit Esmeralda. They seized upon inconsistencies in her timeline, pointed out discrepancies in her memory of certain events. They tried to portray her as a troubled teen seeking attention, perhaps even fabricating the abuse. However, their strategy backfired. Esmeralda, though shaken by the aggressive line of questioning, stood firm. Her honesty, her raw emotion shone through. The jury, who had listened intently to her every word, seemed unmoved by the defense's attempts to undermine her credibility. The prosecution, in their rebuttal, dismantled the defense's arguments point by point. They presented evidence of Callahan's predatory behavior, his inappropriate messages to Esmeralda, the late-night encounters corroborated by witnesses. They painted a picture of a man who abused his position of power, preying on a vulnerable student. The closing arguments were a stark contrast in styles. The prosecution's was a powerful summation of the evidence, a call for justice for Esmeralda. The defense, their case crumbling, resorted to pleas for leniency, reminding the jury of Callahan's previously unblemished record, his contributions to the community. The jury deliberated for 6 long hours. 6 hours of agonizing wait for both Esmeralda and Callahan. 6 hours where the weight of the decision ahead hung heavy in the air. Finally, the jury filed back into the courtroom, their faces etched with the gravity of their decision. The verdict was read, guilty on all counts. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Esmeralda, surrounded by her family, let out a sob, a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Callahan sat motionless, his face ashen, the weight of the verdict crushing him. Justice had been served.
The county courthouse stood tall against the January sky. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. The day had arrived. The day James Callahan would be sentenced for his crimes against Esmeralda Ruiz. The courtroom was filled to capacity. Journalists, community members, and advocates surrounded Esmeralda and her family. All present, bound by a shared desire for justice. The weight of the impending sentence hung heavy in the air. Every rustle of paper, every whispered word seemed amplified in the silence. Esmeralda Ruiz, a young woman whose spirit had refused to be broken, stood tall. Her voice, though soft, resonated with the strength she had fought so hard to reclaim. She looked directly at Callahan. She recounted the abuse, her words painting a vivid picture of the pain she had endured. She spoke of sleepless nights, of the dark cloud of self-doubt that had threatened to consume her. But most importantly, Esmeralda spoke of her survival. Judge Rivera listened intently. His expression remained unchanged, a mask of judicial solemnity. When Esmeralda finished, a hush fell over the courtroom. The judge began to speak, his voice strong and steady. He acknowledged Esmeralda's courage. He spoke of the responsibility he held to ensure justice. When he addressed Callahan, his tone shifted, reflecting the gravity of the crimes committed. The judge sentenced Callahan to 42 years, a testament to the severity of his actions. Section 4, Beyond the Courtroom Walls. The courtroom erupted in applause. Tears streamed down faces, a mixture of relief and lingering sadness. For Esmeralda, it was a victory hard won, but the fight was far from over. Esmeralda began the long journey of healing, seeking solace in therapy and art. She found her voice through painting, each stroke a testament to her resilience. Her mother Maria channeled her grief into action, becoming a fierce advocate for change within the school system. Section 5. Healing and Hope. The school district implemented sweeping reforms. Mandatory training, anonymous tip lines, and stricter protocols were put in place. The community rallied around Esmeralda, offering support and understanding. Esmeralda, a year later, shared her story on a popular podcast. Her words, raw and honest, touched countless lives. She spoke of her pain, but also of the strength she found within herself. Section 6. A new dawn, a shared strength. You are not alone, Esmeralda stated firmly, her voice reaching out to other survivors. Your story matters. Your voice deserves to be heard. Her journey, from silenced victim to empowered survivor, served as a beacon of hope. Esmeralda's triumph transcended the courtroom walls. It became a testament to the indomitable spirit that resides within us all, a spirit capable of overcoming even the darkest of times. When the courtroom doors closed behind James Callahan, many assumed the story was over, a predator punished, a survivor freed, justice served. But the truth is, the aftermath of abuse does not end with a verdict. It lingers, it reshapes futures. It asks the survivors to start over day by day. And that's exactly what Esmeralda Ruiz did. Healing is not linear. In the months after the sentencing, Esmeralda moved out of the city with her mother. El Paso had become a city of whispers and headlines, and while her name had never officially been released by the court, it wasn't hard for classmates or locals to put the pieces together. She needed a fresh start, not to escape what happened, but to redefine who she was beyond it. She began therapy more intensively, twice a week, different modalities, talk therapy, EMDR, art therapy. The sessions were exhausting. Some days she cried until she couldn't speak, other days she said nothing at all, but week by week, piece by piece, she began to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: control. The nightmares still came, the flashbacks, the self-doubt. But she began to learn how to separate what happened to her from who she was. He was the abuser, she wrote in her private journal, but I get to be the survivor. A national spotlight, Esmeralda never asked for attention, but her courtroom speech, posted anonymously by a journalist on social media, caught fire. Within weeks, clips of her voice and excerpts from her words were shared by activists, educators, and survivors across the country. Her story appeared in national outlets under headlines like "Teen Survivor's Powerful Words Shake Texas Courtroom. She Spoke So Other Girls Wouldn't Be Silenced," "How a 17-Year-Old Helped Change the Conversation About Abuse in Schools." She received thousands of letters, emails, and DMs from other survivors. Some were from adults, still carrying the pain of what they'd endured decades ago. Others were teenagers, just like she'd been, who hadn't yet told a soul. The attention wasn't easy. Esmeralda turned down interviews from major networks. She wasn't ready, she didn't want to be a symbol, she just wanted to breathe. But she realized something. She had power, and that power could be used for more than just survival, from victim to advocate. 2 years after the trial, Esmeralda did something she never imagined. She stepped onto a stage. It was at a small community college conference on youth safety. The auditorium was filled with teachers, social workers, and counselors. She didn't use slides. She didn't read from a script. She told her story, calmly, bravely, unapologetically. "You don't need to understand trauma to believe someone in pain," she told the crowd. "You just need to listen." The impact was instant. Attendees lined up afterward to thank her. Several teachers admitted they had ignored warning signs in the past. One guidance counselor said it changed how she approached students. From there, Esmeralda joined a youth-led organization focused on child advocacy. She helped develop school training materials on grooming behaviors, boundaries, and how to report abuse safely. She wasn't just healing, she was helping others heal too. Legislative change in Texas. The courtroom victory hadn't changed the laws, not yet. But Esmeralda's story was sparking conversations at the state level. In early 2025, a state representative introduced the Ruiz Act, a proposed law requiring mandatory annual abuse prevention training for all school staff, a standardized protocol for reporting suspected abuse, increased penalties for educators found guilty of misconduct involving minors, anonymous student reporting systems in all public middle and high schools. The bill didn't pass the first time, but Esmeralda wasn't discouraged. She attended hearings. She gave testimony, quiet, composed, and devastatingly clear. "I am not here because I want revenge," she told the panel. "I'm here because the system didn't stop a predator, and it still won't unless you do something about it." The bill passed in 2026, unanimously. The Ruiz Act became law, a law named not for a politician or a prosecutor, but for a teenager who refused to be quiet. The long road forward. Esmeralda is now 20. She still lives a quiet life, no red carpets, no book deals. She attends a local university studying psychology with a focus on trauma recovery. Her goal? To become a licensed therapist for youth survivors. She still writes poetry, not about pain anymore, but about growth. Her writing has been featured in small literary journals, always under a pen name. She doesn't need the spotlight, her work speaks for itself. Maria, her mother, still keeps a photo on the fridge. It's Esmeralda at age 15, just before it all began. Wide-eyed, full of dreams, she looks at it often. Not with sadness anymore, but with gratitude. That girl survived, Maria says, and the woman she became is a fighter. Community impact. Back in El Paso, the school district continues its reforms. The former classroom where it happened has been converted into a student counseling space. A quiet, peaceful room with soft lighting and murals painted by students. They call it the Sanctuary. Each year around the anniversary of the trial, local students write anonymous letters to survivors of abuse. These letters are collected and read aloud by counselors, offering support, love, and hope. One letter read, "Dear survivor, I don't know your name, but I know what it's like to feel scared, ashamed, and confused. You are not alone, you never were." Those words, might have been Esmeralda's, years ago. Now they belong to the next generation she helped protect. Closing narration. In every tragedy, there is a moment when someone must choose, silence or voice, darkness or light. Esmeralda chose voice. She turned her trauma into testimony, her fear into fuel, her pain into purpose. And while the scars remain, so does her strength. One girl, one voice, one case that shook a system and changed it. This is not the end of her story, it's